Good morning and welcome to this discussion of the assessment item number 2 that you're asked to complete for this class on history and geography, EDU 502. In this task, you're asked to produce a 10-minute video as well as 1,500 words, including transcript and discussion of the ideas raised in the video. There's a number of topics you could choose for this video, and you could present this video as if you were presenting to a class you might teach or to their parents. Or alternatively, you could prepare the video as it might be presented to teachers who were going to be teaching this class. And if you were to take that approach, that would enable you to discuss more fully and deeply some of the teaching issues and areas and responses and tasks that you might include in this topic. Whichever way you approach this, it's worth thinking about some of the pedagogical tasks and challenges involved and some of the ways in which you can strengthen and deepen the learning of your students. In assessment 2, in preparing your video and a transcript and then a discussion of what you've presented, you're asked to show the development of your knowledge and skills in teaching history and culture in the New South Wales primary school context, particularly with a focus on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories as part of the wider history. This requires you to investigate a historically significant topic. And to do this, you could refer to the ACARA documents and therefore the topics that are covered. And so in year 1 and 2, we find that the focus is on history much closer to home. And then as you move beyond that, we have history that becomes broader and larger through to year 6 when it's Australia-wide history. So the more localised history in year 1 focuses on family life and similarities and differences to the past, whereas when we move on to year 2, we then come to the study of history in terms of the wider relationship with places and communities more broadly around us. And this can include the concepts of continuity and change over time and various perspectives. And one group has one perspective, one has another, and the importance of empathy for different people from different backgrounds, and thinking about what aspects of the past still can be seen today, what remains the same, and what has changed, and how have changes such as technology and medicine shaped and influenced our daily lives, and does everyone have equal access to technology, medicine, education, and opportunities that flow through. As we move on to year 3, then the study of history broadens even further to look at how symbols and events contribute to our sense of identity and who we are. And so we begin to look at the sources of history, primary sources, how we find out about the past, continuing to look at continuity and change and cause and effect. That is, what is the effect on people and communities of the changes that we see? Moving on to year 4, we see that history is developed even further to look in greater detail at events in the 1700s, 1800s and 1900s with the arrival of Europeans in Australia and the concept of colonisation and colonialism and the effect on Indigenous Australians before and after contact with the Europeans. And then also the concept of sustainability, What's it mean if we're going to care for all of the resources that we have in Australia over time, as well as the concept of law and rules and government, which continue to be developed in year 5 and 6. And we ask questions such as, how do various laws affect the lives of people, bringing hope and help and confidence and security, but at times a sense of inequality and unfair representation for particular groups in society? What are the short and long-term effects of European settlement, bringing various forms of education and medicine and law, and at times this can disadvantage certain groups while promoting opportunities for others? And what is the significance on both the social and the natural environment of the changes that have been introduced? After year 4, in year 5, we study the continued development more broadly, including Europe and North America, and the wider concepts of colonisation and migration that took place. That is, the opportunity for people to go to the US was shortened when there was the American Revolution and Declaration of Independence from England and Europe, and then a movement to Australia, which began with convicts and began with the hopeful reformation and resettlement of people from Ireland, England and Europe. And then through the 1800s, industrialisation and other developments led to an expanding concept of what it might be for the people living here in Australia, as well as change relationships with the First Nations people and opportunities to give them greater opportunity and rights and recognition. And then in the 1970s, this increases even further. And what are our roles in terms of caring for the environment as a consumer and a citizen? And how does our beliefs, such as Christian beliefs, affect our understanding of these relationships and roles? And how are our values and perceptions outworked? And how do we work with people with different values and perceptions? And so we study a number of areas in year 5, including the founding of the British colonies and the changes that are associated with this and what this meant for Australian society. And then in year 6, this develops even further and more broadly before going on in year 7, 8, 9, 10 to look at ancient history and modern history and some of the major changes that have taken place in the last 2,000 to 3,000 years. In year 6, there's an even deeper examination of the position of Australia within the world and in relation to Asia. There's also a deeper understanding of the rights and responsibilities of each person in decision making and in civic participation and in care for the ecological world around us and roles in government processes and economic systems more broadly. So all of these can be considered as you choose a particular topic that you are going to look at in assignment 2 and also in the other assignments in this subject. I encourage you each week as you spend 10 hours a week studying in each subject, including this one, and half that time writing your assignments, but half reading through the material that's covered each week, that you become familiar with major concepts in the readings each week. And if you allocate 3 or 4 hours each week, up to 5 hours each week, you'll be able to develop a deeper understanding of these concepts that are covered each week, from the introduction to the key themes in week 1, the importance of history and geography for self-understanding in weeks 2 and 3, and then the importance of curriculum mapping to develop a well-developed geography or history program, the the importance of numeracy and literacy in our teaching of history and geography in week 5, the importance of social justice as a major theme, which could come into this assignment 2, and that would certainly lift the depth of your analysis and increase the depth of your analysis and lift your scholarly discussion in week 6 as you look at social justice more deeply. Week 7 covers the specific topic that we're focusing on, Australian history and First Nations people. Week 8 has readings and material on pedagogical approaches as you realise the differences of the students in your classroom and how you might respond to these differences by developing various pedagogical approaches to work with them. Week 9, we look at planning and in particular assessment. How important assessment is. Each hour of teaching, each week of teaching, each semester and term of teaching in order to encourage students to reach their goals and also to provide feedback to students and ourselves and parents and school on the progress that's being made. And then week 10, worldview and Christian worldview and values, and week 11, sustainability for long-term reading. So each of these topics that are covered should be considered in writing your assignments, including assignment 2. So you're asked to produce this 10-minute video. You're asked to write some of the transcript, and you could have a fuller transcript, and computers can generate a fuller transcript, but you might take just a few sentences and paragraphs and bring that over into your 1,500-word discussion of the transcript. And in this, you should look at why you've chosen this particular topic, why this topic is important, what's the benefits for studying the topic that you've chosen to work with, what are the outcomes that you're aiming for in alignment with the New South Wales curriculum and the Australian curriculum. And also, you can lift your grades and engagement with scholarly ideas by identifying academic literature relating to what you're looking at, such as Aboriginal histories and culture and education and pedagogy and trauma-aware practice. And if you go to Google Scholar, and if you put into Google Scholar some of these areas that you are looking at, such as New South Wales, education, Aboriginal studies, and maybe colonialism, history, something like that. And then you can bring up some resources here. And if you click on Cite, C-I-T-E, then you can cut and paste a copy of that resource. Control-C makes a copy, Control-P pastes it. You've got a copy of that resource that you are looking at, and then you can read these resources, take some notes, rewrite them in your own words, develop a discussion on them. And the more you interact with these key ideas, thoughts, and understandings, the deeper the analysis that can flow into the assignment that you develop. And you can think as well, I think it's important to find your own voice, your own ideas, and to express those in your assignment. And so most of the assignment will be in the third person, but at times towards the end, you might have a paragraph. I have found in my teaching in the first person, don't overdo it, but certainly having a sense of ownership and a sense of voice can be very valuable. And usually it might be written in the third person. The experience of the author of this assignment has found that, but at times you could have first person. I have found that. You should justify the decisions that you've made from a pedagogical point of view. What activities could you use? How does it support language development, numeracy development, development of the identity of the student as they gain a greater understanding of themselves and others, a greater empathy and relational abilities in order to be able to understand other people from other backgrounds and to relate to them well, and a sense of agency, how this helps a student to become more fully informed and more actively involved in their lives and communities. You should also explain how your teaching approach maintains a sense of cultural understanding, cultural safety and respect for different groups such as Aboriginals and Aboriginal ways of knowing and being. This assessment enables you to develop a discipline-based knowledge that is history and also other areas including education and pedagogy and ethics, and it can include Christian perspectives on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders and their history and how it is communicated in the primary school year levels that you'll be teaching in. And often you would focus on just one year level, which could be year 5 or year 6 or any one of the year levels that you are preparing this resource for. You should demonstrate evidence-based, that is going to Google Scholar and to your college library and finding resources. And if you've got 8 to 10 to 12 or more scholarly resources in text, that is 1 or more, 2 or 3 in each paragraph, and 8 to 10 to 12 or more at the end in the list of the references at the end, you'll show evidence from the resources that you've engaged with. And if you want to get even higher grades, you would look at scholarly resources that have done research study and have found through research evidence and statistics that shows certain approaches are more effective, and you would say these studies show, and that would give you even higher grades as well. You also want to be culturally aware and culturally responsive, and to engage with scholarly resources that show an awareness and understanding of culture and the need for care. Be aware that many people, perhaps all of us, have faced certain areas of trauma in our lives, and certain cultural groups face trauma more than others. Certain families face particular challenges, and it's important for us to be aware of the traumas that people face. We're all different as well, some more introvert, some more extrovert, and so there can be different personality challenges that some face. And so it would be good to go to scholarly resources to discuss trauma-aware teaching and personality difference approaches to understanding and teaching. Also, clearly there are complex historical ideas that we're engaging with, and as university students in second, third, fourth year or masters, we are engaging with big complex questions relating to colonisation, First Nations people. But then in communicating to primary school students, we need to think, what are the issues and the contexts and settings that they are in, and how do we take these complex ideas and communicate them in a way that primary students can understand. And we might use analogies or stories or examples that bring it to their, not dumbing it down so much, but communicating in a way that's readily understood by children at each level and stage of their development. We are also seeking to demonstrate and to develop further our professional communication skills in writing this up, and then in later years we'll use the same skills in communicating to parents, in communicating to other educational organisations, and at times this has to be quite brief and succinctly condensed down, which is why we're saying 1,500 words here in a 10-minute video. But at the same time, other times we might need to expand that larger, and so if you need to include an appendix, then let me know, and you could have some other resources that show that you've developed more material that you would keep as resources that you could use in the future. So if you have any questions at all for assignment 2, please get in touch. Also, I encourage you, as I said before, to read through each of the class notes, and you would spend up to 10 hours a week doing each class, which means up to 5 hours a week, 3 to 5 hours a week, where you're looking at these notes, taking some notes, and getting a good understanding of the concepts that are studied over the 12 weeks in history and geography. History and geography are so important in that they help us understand our world and help us to understand ourselves and our place in it. We're not just living in a place without history. There are hundreds of years of changes that have affected who we are, where we are, and the opportunities that we have and our students have. And similarly, geographically, we don't just live in this one spot, but there are geographical processes that are taking place, and geographical skills as well as historical skills can help us understand the settings and situations that have contributed to our identity and our opportunities. And then curriculum mapping, numeracy and literacy, social justice, Australian history and the history of First Nations people and other topics can help us to understand these areas that we're looking at more fully and deeply. The unit outline discusses the broader ideas that are covered each week in this subject, and the ACARA documents and the Australian curriculum give you specific detail on what is expected by parents, governments, teachers, schools, scholars, universities in what should be taught at what stage of development for each of the children. It's a joy to work with you in this important subject and other subjects as well as we teach, and I look forward to keeping in touch. Any questions, send me an email or get in touch. Let's keep in touch and catch up at our tutorials as well where we can. Thank you.